Hi, I'm back. It's me, your favorite Garfield fan is back and ready to talk about Twilight. Imagine explaining that sentence to a Victorian child. You simply couldn't. Garfield he's a cat that talks and he's in the newspaper, and Twilight is about vampires, young boy. It's a movie, which is kind of like a play that a camera has taken a million pictures of. And we know this to be true. Hi, my name is Carly. If you haven't been here before, what a wild video for you to start on. What a wild video. Today, I am going to be talking about my favorite Reddit post I found in r/hobby drama, and it is about Midnight Sun, which is a Twilight remake Stephenie Meyer, the author of Twilight, wanted to make, and how it ruined her life. Yes! Woo! The body keeps score. Okay, I will link the post below because it is iconic. Please read it. I have simplified it down because I think that this is a story that needs to be told. But thank you to the author of this post. Quick background into my relationship with Twilight. I didn't read Twilight when it came out. I had way too much internalized misogyny for that. Just way too much. I was like, girls like Twilight and girls are stupid, but boys are the president. So I guess I have to make that choice. So I wasn't a Twilight girly. My friends all read Twilight and I was like, you guys are so fucking stupid. Imagine enjoying yourself and kind of throwing yourself into girlhood. I could never. I have to be miserable. I have to be trapped by the patriarchy. That's kind of my thing. So haven't read Twilight. Would watch it every once in a while at a sleepover, but wasn't into it. The past year or so, I have been hosting a rewatch series here in Toronto. I feel like I can say this. I don't know if I can. I'm going to announce it early, but like we basically have been rewatching all of the Twilight movies in like a Rocky Horror Picture style where we have call and response games and drinking games and live commentary. It's so fucking fun. We are doing Twilight again in October for All Hallows Eve, Halloween. Ever heard of it? And I'm so excited. So I've seen all the Twilight movies recently and they're phenomenal. They are just pure camp in every way. It's like, I'm so jealous of a thing that can be so dumb and yet so good. Like, they're just really enjoyable. So I haven't read the books, but from the culture, I know a lot about it. And I was raised in that time. You know what I mean? So let me please serve to you today some niche Twilight drama. Let me do that for you on this fine afternoon. Let's start with Stephenie Meyer. She wrote the Twilight books. That's her right there. Slay. I, for the life of me, really thought her name was Stephenie Meyers. It's not. That's a Mandela effect. And here's a fun fact. Mandela effect is any incorrect fact that you thought to be true. It doesn't have to be that anyone else remembers it. If you remember it, that's your reality. That's your reality. So, on June 2nd, 2003, couple years on the heels of 9/11, never forget, Stephenie Meyer was working as a wife. Sorry, I shouldn't have worded it that way. She was a homemaker and wife, and while she was vibing in that regard, she was struck by a vision, That's So Raven style. And that vision later became the Twilight books. It was like a dark, mysterious, evil guy and a naive, innocent young girl, which is, I guess, is a new thought. It's not every romance ever written. But she took this mythical sight, you know what I mean? She took this vision and she turned it into a book series that would make her surely millions of dollars. Like, what's her net worth? You know what I mean? Let's see. $1.25 million. So take that as you will. If you have a singular dream, write the novel. Write the novel so you can become a millionaire. A couple of important things to note about this. Twilight is, of course, the story of Edward and Bella. Bella is a regular human girl, lame, and Edward is a sexy, pale, sparkling vampire 100-year-old man who falls in love with her, and they fall in love together. He doesn't want to be with her because he feels like he's going to kill her because he's a bloodthirsty animal, and she doesn't care. She doesn't give a about that. And anyway, this series spanned 4 books. Like the canonical series is 4 books. Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn. 5 movies, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2, because remember when every single YA movie had the last movie, make it a Part 1 and 2. Doesn't matter if you have the content for it. It's parts 1 and it's There's too many wires. It's parts 1 and 2. In 3 months' time, only 3 months, Stephenie Meyer wrote the manuscript of Twilight, the love story of our girl Bella and Edward. Okay? At this time in the publishing industry, we were in what some might call Pottermania. Yeah! Where after the massive success of the Harry Potter books written by, yes, America's favorite turf, the publishing industry, they were thirsty for some YA books. They saw the gap in the market, how lucrative young people could be with literature, and they needed Twilight, and didn't we all? Something that I think is kind of interesting and important to note is obviously there are more Harry Potter books than Twilight books. There's 7 Harry Potter books and 4 like original series Twilight books. But Harry Potter was written over the better course of a decade. Twilight was written over basically like 3 to 4 years. Like they were written back to back very quickly. The publishing industry was like riding her ass to get her to write these incredibly fast. They're pulpy, they're weird, but they're also like written very, very quickly, which I feel like explains so many of the criticisms of the Twilight books and of the thing as a whole. Like the Twilight books are fun. You know what I mean? Like Twilight as a general thing, it's like not supposed to be like life-altering literature. But I mean, like think about criticizing something like in 2005. Okay, just I'm not making sense. Have my meds kicked in? Absolutely not. In 2005, Twilight was written. And in 2006, New Moon was written. In 2007, Eclipse was published. I mean published. Let's say that. Lost my mind. And in 2008, Breaking Dawn was published. So between the years of 2005 and 2008, these massive and thicky books were all written. Stephenie Meyer's, in her prolific era, in the course of about 4-ish years, or 3 years, let's say, wrote 4 massive books. And then all of those books were made into movies. The first Twilight movie came out in 2008, which is the same year that Breaking Dawn came out. The Twilight movies, cinematic masterpieces. I'll say it. I'm right. They give us such wonderful scenes as this is the skin of a killer, Bella, Robert Pattinson, going for the Oscar on this. We have Renesmee, their child, who somebody explained to me what the fuck that is, because it's not a baby. You couldn't cast a baby actor. You had to make, it's a robot. Presumably it's a robot, but what the fuck is this? Why? Why? And some iconic scenes such as this from the Twilight books. I ended up in my only skirt. Long, khaki colored, still casual. I put on a dark blue blouse he'd once complimented. A quick glance in the mirror told me my hair was entirely impossible, so I pulled it back into a ponytail. Okay, I bounced down the stairs. I'm decent. He was waiting at the foot of the stairs, closer than I thought, and I bounded right into him. He steadied me, holding me a careful distance away for a few seconds before suddenly pulling me closer. Wrong again, he murmured in my ear. You are utterly indecent. No one should look so tempting. It's not fair. And there's something to note about Stephenie Meyer and just like the Christian girl autumn undertones. There's a lot of like weird undertones about like virginity. You know those girl-defined girls that are like how to wear jeans in a God-honoring way? Like that's Bella. You know, she's wearing a long khaki skirt and a blue blouse and he's about to fuck her hard. So the first Twilight movie, bang on success, right, and the 4th Twilight book released, there is a voracious just thirst and hunger for another more Twilight content. We want more Twilight content. So Stephenie Meyer announces Midnight Sun, which is a retelling of the original Twilight book. But wait for it, wait for this, you're never going to believe it. It's from Edward's perspective. You know that bloodthirsty monster who wants to eat Bella alive? What if we have just like 800 pages of just him thinking about her? What if we just had the story from his perspective this time? What if this series was more of a Joe from You vibe instead of like a quirky girl falling in love? You want it, right? When the public first became aware of Midnight Sun, it was in 2008, but Midnight Sun would not be released until 2020, and I'm gonna break down the 3 things that happened to basically like break Stephenie Meyer's brain and stop her from writing Midnight Sun altogether for years on end. The first is the leak, okay? In late August 2008, the first couple chapters of Midnight Sun were leaked to the public. This is a classic 2008 leak, and I respect the hell out of it. It's not like a PDF that is going around, you know, it looks nice, it looks clean. This motherfucker is a photocopy scanned. You know when your teacher like gives you a worksheet and it's very obviously messily photocopied? That's what this is. So it feels wrong, right? Like it feels like you're a spy. And as a spy, you just so happen to come across some forbidden redacted pages of a young man who is a vampire who wants to eat a girl. But it's not. But like the first couple of chapters were leaked online. You can still find them online today. There was a lot of conversation in the fandom of like, are we reading these? Because we love Stephenie Meyer's work, and it was taken out of context, and like it wasn't her, and it's her work in progress, and it's so disrespectful, but also we are thirsty as for any Twilight content. I found a couple different leaked chapters when looking to find the original like actual leak, and out of most of them they come out to around 245 pages, which is a monster leak. I don't know if that's how much the original was, but that's crazy. Stephenie Meyer addressed this on her blog. She is a blog that is fairly active, and it is insane. She said, as some of you may have heard, my partial draft of Midnight Sun was illegally posted on the internet and has since been virally distributed without my knowledge or permission, or the knowledge and permission of my publisher. I have a good idea of how the leak happened. Spice tea, as there were very few copies of Midnight Sun that left my possession, and each was unique. Due to the little changes I made to the manuscript at different times, I can tell when each left my possession and whom it was given to. English major. The manuscript that was illegally distributed on the internet was given to trusted individuals for a good purpose. I have no comment beyond that, as I believe there was no malicious intent with the initial distribution. Another iconic post on Stephenie Meyer's blog, 5 reasons we're obsessed with dragons. That's real. That's from 2009. So really go down the rabbit hole of this blog. You will not be disappointed. So as Stephenie Meyer had said in that announcement, she wasn't pressing charges. She is aware of probably who did the leak based on the very specific changes she made to the manuscript as she was writing it, and believed it wasn't done with any malicious intent. Later on in an interview, she stated, I was a part of a writer's group early in, and we would all trade manuscripts, and I think somebody made a copy, and that there was no harm intended. So while it's just a setback and kind of annoying and embarrassing to have the world read your work before it's ready, it's okay. Also on this hobby drama Reddit page, one of the comments says, oh, I'm almost positive I know how Midnight Sun leaked. My sister was in a group at the local library who had received Twilight series advanced reading copies through their publication. We went on a family trip to Forks, Washington before Twilight became a pandemic, and Meyer gave the Midnight Sun manuscript to them as a treat shortly after it leaked. I have zero doubt that a small band of teenage girls who never received such attention again contained someone who couldn't keep it to themselves. So that's weird, but basically saying there was a group of teenage girls who were in a group at the local library, and they received advanced reading copies of Twilight throughout their publication. Big Twilight fan club. Stephenie Meyers gave them the Midnight Sun manuscript as a treat. They might have leaked it. That makes sense. In another interview, Robert Pattinson was like, I don't know if I leaked it. I'm worried that maybe I leaked it, which he is kind of angling to become the iconic Tom Holland leaking confidential Marvel things on Instagram Live. My favorite moment of all time. But like, how can you not remember, Rob? He was like, I hope it wasn't me. Babe, what do you mean you hope it? You can't remember? The second culprit that pushed back Midnight Sun was the Twilight movies. Stephenie Meyer, all 5 of the Twilight films were written by Melissa Rosenberg. So they weren't actually written by Stephenie Meyer, but Stephenie Meyer was like very close and related to the production and was helping out a lot. And because of this, she found it really, really hard to separate these Twilight movies from writing another Twilight book. She pictured Robert Pattinson when she was writing about Edward. She was so involved in like the crafting of this visual universe of her books that she found it really hard to separate the books from the movie, and that worried her about her writing. The Twilight movies, killing Stephenie Meyer. She said in an interview, I was working on the movies at that time and finishing up the last novel, and I was able to do that last novel without interference mentally from the film and the actors being the characters. But I could feel it seeping in more and more, and I wasn't really able to get into the characters completely separate from the movies anymore. So I didn't really feel like I could write at that point because it was a little tainted by another vision. So instead of releasing Midnight Sun, Stephenie Meyer released a short novella called The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. Bree Tanner is like a tangential minor character in Eclipse, I believe. The Twilight fandom still thirsty for a single droplet of water at this time, sucking up damn crumbs from the floor, just desperate as for any Twilight content, still read it, enjoyed it, they were happy. But, you know, they weren't in like the Twilight renaissance yet that we were at, and they were waning followers because now at this point, all the movies had been released. Now, time for the third and final killer of Stephenie Meyer's and Midnight Sun. And yeah, I said kill. E.L. James. Sue me, E.L. James. I dare you. It'll make me so f***ing popular. I really think I have no understanding of PR or the law or, you know, marketing really, but I really think if E.L. James sued me, I could relay that into an iconic career. I just feel as though that is true. So, E.L. James, do it. Do it. E.L. James is the author of the 50 Shades of Grey series. If a single series was more harpooned by misogyny than Twilight, I think it might be 50 Shades. The 50 Shades of Grey series follows Christian Grey and Anastasia, I want to say. I can't believe I have that in the back of my head. But basically, it is a romance between a boss and his employee, and they do gratuitous BDSM that has been for years debunked by the BDSM community, being like, there is no safe word, they are not discussing boundaries, this is not what BDSM is. It's just like a person's idea of what BDSM is. It's hardcore erotica. There's a lot of smut in here, and it got really incredibly popular because like book clubs and middle-aged women got really into it, and because it like reinvigorated their sex lives. It's worth noting, despite all of the strays that 50 Shades of Grey catches, and a lot of them are valid, like just incorrectly speaking for the BDSM community is wild, just becoming the front man for BDSM, knowing nothing about it. I love that choice, but it's insane. I think there's a lot of like persistent misogyny in it. I don't know. I didn't read these books because like, I'm gonna say a controversial opinion. I'll just watch porn. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll just, like, if I want to get off, I understand that some people, smut is for some people. It's not really. My camera died because I was about to be silenced. My camera was like, don't talk about porn and smut online. Good thing I don't listen to the rules, and I actually believe in a women's voice, unlike my camera. Anyways, I don't really understand the point of smut. That's not to say it's bad. That's not me talking against it. It's just like, I'm visual. Anyways, 50 Shades of Grey was like a smash hit, marketed towards a group of women that didn't have like sexual content marketed towards them. I think it probably did, for better or for worse, no matter how upset or not upset you are. Probably changed a lot of women's sexual lives. And I do think that that's positive, even though it's got some of the most insane sex scenes known to man. So the first 50 Shades of Grey book was published in 2011, and the first movie was made in 2015, starring my favorite Nepo baby and Lime aficionado, Dakota Johnson. But 50 Shades of Grey being published traditionally and self-published, that's not the first time. That's not the first time humankind was exposed to the writings of E.L. James. Oh no. Let me pull this shit up. It was published on fanfiction.net originally as a Twilight fanfiction. Christian Grey was Edward, and Anastasia was Bella. It's worth noting that E.L. James's username was Snow Queen's Ice Dragon, and the original fanfiction was called Master of the Universe. So that was a runaway hit. Then E.L. James filed the serial numbers off, which means you change any of the identifying factors of like the fandom that your book is written about. So if there's any references to Christian Grey being a vampire or of them being in Forks, Washington, you get rid of all of that, you change the names, and then you can self-publish or shop that manuscript to traditional publishers. So 50 Shades of Grey was originally written as a fan fiction in which Edward Cullen was not a vampire, but he was a businessman who was really into BDSM, and Bella was his new intern. Awesome. That power dynamic doesn't get much better than that. So, as I mentioned before, Stephenie Meyer is like kind of puritanical, and I wouldn't say sex negative, but there's a lot of weird shit in the Twilight movies and Twilight books. I won't say weird. I don't know enough to comment on that. Where it's like, and Bella wore a long-sleeved shirt because actually covering up is way more attractive to men. And actually, that's better, to not show your body. And I actually think girls look better without all of that clown makeup. Like, there's some stuff like that. So Stephenie Meyer didn't love the 50 Shades of Grey series. She has been polite about it. It is worth noting. She hasn't said anything too bad about 50 Shades of Grey, but it is like a successful publishing of a fan fiction about her characters that is incredibly erotic, and that's not something that she necessarily would jive with. Here's what I will say about 50 Shades of Grey. There's a movie on Netflix, at least in Canada, find it if you can. It's called Book Club. It's got Jane Fonda in it, and her book club of all like older women reads 50 Shades of Grey, and then the rest of the movie is them having sexual escapades, and that is the best movie I have ever seen in my entire life. I watched the trailer for the second one on YouTube, and I found my favorite YouTube comment of all time that says, "I am not a Jane Fonda fan, even though she is great in this movie. I still cannot forget what she did to our servicemen during the Vietnam War." Because Jane Fonda was fervently against the Vietnam War. Yes, queen! Anyways, Stephenie Meyer was asked about 50 Shades of Grey in an interview with The Guardian, and she said, "It's so not my genre. Erotica is not something I read. I don't even read a romance. It's too smutty." Great. You wrote a romance, bitch. There's a reason my books have a lot of innocence. That's the sort of world I live in. Great. Awesome. To me, true love is that you would hurt yourself before you would hurt your partner. You would do anything to make them happy, even at your own expense. There's nothing selfish about true love, she added. And like, maybe I'm not in love in the way that Stephenie Meyers has been in love, or Stephenie Meyer has been in love. But like, true love is that you would hurt yourself before you would hurt your partner? Why does anyone have to get hurt? I don't feel like anyone has to get hurt. Who's getting hurt? Who has a gun? So although Stephenie Meyer is obviously not thrilled about E.L. James, it's 2015. The last Twilight movie has been out for 3 years. The original Twilight book, it's like over a decade old at this point. She should have some time to get back into her writing groove, right? She doesn't have to focus on the movies. Everyone's moved on to E.L. James, so there's less eyes on her. Maybe she can write something new. Maybe she can get back into writing these characters. Who knows? Also, it's the 10th anniversary of the first Twilight book. Fans, they're going to be excited for the celebration of 10 years of Twilight. 10 more years. 10 more years. So, for the 10th anniversary of Twilight, Stephenie Meyers does release a reimagined version of Twilight. But it's not Midnight Sun, so it's not told from Edward's perspective. Instead, it's called Life and Death Twilight Reimagined, which is Twilight, but the genders are swapped. So Edward is a human and Bella is a vampire. And I haven't read this. I honestly think I would love this shit. This seems awesome. Like, now all of a sudden it's like girl boss, female manipulator, femcel core, and she's trying to destroy like Edward and eat a human man. Like, I'm in. This sounds actually great. I haven't read it, but I feel like I should. I feel like I would actually love it. So every character is gender swapped in this like reimagining, except for Bella's parents. Bella's dad, Charlie, is still her dad, but I guess now, is he Edward's dad? This is confusing. So it seems like we're good. The Twilight fans eating up the reimagined Twilight gender swap release. She's out of the woods of helping out on these movies. She's out of the spotlight a bit. Finally, she can write, you know, Twilight, in parentheses, Edward's version. But then E.L. James strikes. E.L. James, the third plane has hit the Twilight fandom's towers. I feel like I shouldn't, is that 2 9/11 references in one video? That seems like too much. But I won't be silenced, because I'm not forgetting. You guys stay forgetting. I'm always remembering up here. Anyways, on July 18th, 2015, E.L. James releases Grey. 50 Shades of Grey as told by Christian. E.L., what are you doing, girl? So not only is 50 Shades of Grey a Twilight fanfic that's published, Stephenie Meyer years ago released the information that she is rewriting Twilight from Edward's perspective, and E.L. James said, I can do that, but faster, and released 50 Shades of Grey from Christian Grey, aka Edward's perspective. I would be punching E.L. James if I was Stephenie Meyer. I'm not, allegedly, If I say allegedly, I can say whatever I want. I would be mad. This is insane. Like, this is a lot. I would be so mad. Obviously, Stephenie Meyers issues an interview with Nylon magazine in which she says that she says a really weird quote. "This was a literal flip of the table moment for me," which is a weird way of saying it just feels like the ground has been like, oh, okay, I really was attacking her word choice and then said a sentence that made no sense. "The tables have turned. Oh, how the turntables," as they say. The rug has been pulled out from under Stephenie Meyers. She's been working on this thing, and then E.L. James just does it faster. However, on May 4th, 2020, on her blog, Stephenie Meyers announces that on August 4th, 2020, Midnight Sun will be released. Girly saw that we were in the midst of a pandemic, and she said, "I need to give my Twilight fangirls the crumbs they've been dutifully waiting for 8 years at this point." Does that math make sense? And Midnight Sun is released. I have a couple highlights from this. I obviously haven't read this book, but through doing my research on what Midnight Sun was about, how it was received, it was generally well received by the Twilight fandom. I collected some of my favorite highlights of things that Midnight Sun, aka Twilight Edward's version, kind of these revelations that have been discovered in this book. What has been revealed through Midnight Sun? Edward and Bella collectively sigh 168 times. That is an average sigh every 4 pages. That is insane. Also, this clip that is from the first movie in which Edward is staring at her like he's going to kill her. Stephenie Meyers says, yeah, he does. He wants to kill her. He's fighting for his life not to rip her throat open in the middle of chem class or bio class or whatever this is. He is fighting for his life not to murder a woman in a class with surely 18 witnesses. The love story of a generation. In the scene where Bella sees Edward walk into the sunlight and sparkle, what is he thinking about at this time? Insects. As I continued to classify, I added calculation. If there were currently 4,913 insects in the area of the meadow, which was roughly 11,035 square feet, how many insects on average would exist in the 1,400 square miles of the Olympic National Park? What if the insect population dropped 1% for each 10 feet of elevation? I brought up in my head a topographic map of the park and started computing the numbers. I love women in STEM. That's all I'll say. This is also a really cool romantic quote from his POV. Just Edward thinking about Bella, the girl who he goes on to marry, and about how he wants to murder her for her blood. It was far better, essential, that I kept my thoughts far, far away from that shape. I was so grateful for the unbecoming sweater. I couldn't afford to make mistakes, and it would be a monumental mistake to dwell on the strange hungers at the thought of her lips. Her skin, her body were shaking loose inside of me, hungers that had evaded me for hundreds of years. But I could not allow myself to think of touching her, because that was impossible.
I would break her.
He's so horny. He's down bad. Another iconic quote. Music in the 50s was good. So much better than the 60s or the 70s. Ugh. Though there were certainly excellent outliers, the artists that were played most often on the limited radio options then were not my favorites. I never warmed up to disco. Like, Edward, shut up. You like this? Like, he's truly pulling a 500 Days of Summer being like, have you ever heard of the Smiths, Bella? You ever heard of the Smiths? Also, there's a quote in this book in which the secretary at the school, because Edward has a superpower where he can read everyone's thoughts except for Bella's. This is established in the books and movies if you didn't know. He can't read Bella's thoughts, which is so funny because it's basically saying, you have not a single thought ever and I can't read them. But throughout this entire book, it's long as fuck because he can read everyone's thoughts around him. And in this part of the book, he reads the school secretary's thoughts about how she wants to fuck him. Obviously, we know that Edward is an 110-year-old man, but she thinks he's 17 years old. Jail time! Oh, she gasped, a little flustered. She smoothed her shirt. Silly, she thought to herself. He's almost young enough to be my son. Hello, Edward. What can I do for you? Her eyelashes fluttered. Too young, she chanted to herself. And on that horrifying note, that's the end of my research on Midnight Sun. I just thought this was an interesting topic. I found it really interesting to go down the rabbit hole of just E.L. James functionally ruining Stephenie Meyers' life. Thank you again to that Reddit post. I'll link it down below. That's a great Reddit forum. I know that those words are never spoken, but the amount of petty random drama in that Reddit, is forum the right word, or do I sound old as stones? Anyways, it's great. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want. You should subscribe to me, or else Edward will kill you. Is that a good segue? Like and subscribe if you want. Who fucking cares? Follow me on Instagram. It's in the description below. Other than that, I'll see you soon. Bye.